In April, one other big piece of news was that Axl Rose was confirmed as AC/DC's new frontman and replacement for Brian Johnson. The last thing that myself and Matanza recorded was actually a quick 20-minute Axl Rose special on how he was heavily rumoured to be the band's vocalist after Brian Johnson's had to step down due to hearing problems from the band, which is a huge shame.
Yeah.
And it's actually been confirmed to much to the surprise of millions of fans. The reception's mostly been negative. There's been a lot of criticism thrown at Angus Young. And what do you think of the whole thing, Matt?
Initially, I was actually shocked at what Angus had done, and my immediate Twitter feed was like, bad call, Angus. Bad call, mate. And I think I've calmed down somewhat about it now because, well, what you would normally see from a distance as Axl looking very fat, now it looks more like he's actually, just been in the gym for quite a bit. He's not as slender as he used to be, but he is more stacked. And he doesn't quite look like the same guy that we once knew from GNR, but the guy definitely has already got the approval of some people who are considered, as we have said, reliable. And we do remember seeing that they have actually performed together already. So, it could just work. It could just work. And seeing the way how they ended up, having Axl and Angus together performing Whole Lot of Rosie.
Yep, that was at Coachella last month.
Yep, and seeing how many views that thing got on a very shoddy camera feed from a phone. 600,000 views from YouTube, in the space of the timeline from the 17th of April to now, which isn't that long. People are probably still going to pay to see this because some of them are going to be curious, others are probably going to be a bit more optimistic than the mass would give them credit for.
It's a funny one, really. I've got mixed feelings about it.
I
would say, in terms of AC/DC's history and principle,
Yeah.
it's a bad move. I think they should retire. However, if you're going to say this, if you can say AC/DC's Rock or Bust Tour 2015 to 2016, they were just over halfway through with, obviously, Brian on vocals, and they've got a man to save the day and to keep the fans happy that AC/DC shows are still happening with Axl Rose, who is good enough to sing those songs, who is a big enough artist to fill those venues and to make people excited if he shows up and if he sings well and if there's chemistry. And then when the tour's over, that'll be it. Fair enough. However, if beyond this tour Axl Rose stays as the vocalist, I don't know what to make of it if that happens. But because obviously there's this European tour, which actually kicks off tonight, the night we are recording this, in Lisbon, Portugal, which will be Axl's first show as the new vocalist of AC/DC. Could you even call it AC/DC? Because the problem is all they've got left from the classic lineup now is Angus Young and Cliff Williams.
Yeah.
We mentioned in episode 11 how they'd lost Malcolm Young and Phil Rudd.
Yeah.
And how there's still, with Angus and Brian, it's still strong enough to fill stadiums.
Yeah.
And now that Brian's gone and they've replaced him with Axl Rose, it is so random.
Yeah.
It is so strange. However, the two together do work as a live unit. However, as AC/DC, like I said, if it's a replacement for this tour to finish things off and to save the day out of respect for Brian and respect for the fans, but is it respect for the fans, though? Because a lot of fans are really pissed off with this decision.
I think that in a way they want to say it is, but, I'm in two minds about it myself. Because surely the whole thing is, AC/DC are genetically bound to keep wanting to go and they cannot relent, but at the same time, surely they are more than aware of their own image in rock, aren't they?
For sure. It seems to me like, about who replaceable, irreplaceable members.
Yeah.
It seems now that AC/DC can continue as long as Angus Young's on stage.
Yeah.
That's it, because let's be honest, Cliff Williams, as legendary as a member he is and as happy as we are that he's in the band, you could replace him. We would rather he get replaced than Brian. Sorry, Cliff, for saying this, but it's true.
Cliff, we have no issue with you whatsoever, mate. You are a brilliant bass player and everything that we loved about Malcolm as a rhythm guitarist, but at the same time, you know, Angus is basically the image of the band. He always has been, even since the Bon Scott era. Brian is the voice that still carries it about. Less commanding than Bon, but probably better in terms of a replacement than you could ever hope for in any possible alternate timeline. 110% is what the minimum estimate is for how great a replacement he is, and from what I have gathered, they only want to use Axl for as long as they have to, but
Axl has, though, gone on to say that he would quite happily... he's already said before they've even played a single show that he would like to be their permanent singer.
Oh, I have not even seen that, actually.
Yeah, it's something that he's mentioned. But one thing that has gone up over the past couple of days is a video that's been posted on AC/DC's Facebook page from Loudwire, I believe, of Angus, Cliff, and Axl together speaking about the upcoming tour, speaking about Brian. And Angus Young quite clearly says that, ignore the rumours, Brian has not been fired. It's due to his hearing, and Axl was up for the job. Axl respects Brian. Axl isn't, jumping up and down about being their new singer. He just says he's got a job to do. He's looking forward to it, and he's respecting the fans, which is good. The guys are saying the right things, considering what's happened and the amount of refunds, the amount of people who've got refunds. You can still get tickets, standing tickets at the Olympic Stadium, which sold out immediately. And that shows Brian's impact and how a lot of fans are pissed off. And in fairness, though, to Axl, he looks actually pretty good. He looks good from the footage I've seen of him singing in Guns N' Roses at the moment and AC/DC songs. Sounds good. And... there is chemistry. You can tell even in that interview that him, Cliff, and Angus were interacting well together and seemed very comfortable together, which was good. And they were saying the right things. And I personally think the tour is going to be great. I think it's going to work. However, and I am still going to attend. I had that weekend planned out. I'm going to AC/DC, going to Bruce Springsteen the next day. It's interesting to see. It's something that will be interesting to tell your grandchildren or to write about, that I saw AC/DC and Axl Rose together, but you don't know until the tour happens. Axl Rose seems to have cleaned up his act. He seems like newly born since rumours and since confirmed Guns N' Roses reunion, he has been on time, sounding good, and this could be a totally reborn rock singer, Axl Rose.
Yeah, and this is actually something that will probably... I think that there's always going to be a bit of pessimism with anything for AC/DC that they do differently. For instance, we know how it was when Brian first came on. Back in Black was the ultimate shut the hell up.
Yeah, and it was a tribute to Bon, that album, really.
Yeah. I am hoping that, if anything, I know that this is never going to happen, but if it ever becomes a possibility at the back of Angus's mind, maybe the theme for an album should be, say Brian is unable to perform ever again, to have an album that is all about carrying the weight of someone who people will, until you prove them wrong, see you as beneath. Try simply creating that as a theme for, if anything, a Brian tribute. I'm hoping there is no need for that, but that would be an interesting concept. And as much as I am tempted just to see the interesting side of it, I'm not sure it would be worth it as a guy that's never even seen AC/DC perform with Brian Johnson. I would love to just give this a miss until he has come back before
as if he comes back. A lot of journalists were saying when this all got confirmed that it was the worst decision AC/DC have ever made. And I don't blame them for saying that in a way, only because...
Same here.
But at the same time, though, I am a paying customer, and since it's happened, there's been a lot of negativity. But since that interview, I know that's in front of cameras, off stage, it's a different thing. One thing that we haven't mentioned yet, which is very important, Matt, is money. Now, AC/DC were meant to be the working man's band, and they have replaced one of their own, Brian, with an egotistical, multi-millionaire, unreliable rock singer who has one hell of a reputation for letting people down.
Remind me, is he meant to be... I know Guns N' Roses were formed in LA, but I know Slash is actually from where we come from.
Yeah, he's from Stoke.
Yeah, he's from this country, and Duff is from Seattle.
Yeah.
So, is Axl a Californian himself?
I think he moved there. I'm sorry, guys, for not knowing this information, but I don't actually know from the top of my head whereabouts in the United States Axl is from. But I know that when he was 19, he moved to LA and met a load of shady characters on his way up.
Yeah, because California seems to have this weird sort of impact on not so much all the natives, but the elitist minority do seem to make it out there much the same way that... I mean, there are two different types of elitists in the Western world. You've got the stereotypical Tories in this country, and then you've got the people that take up, the wealthy aspects of America, which shows there isn't actually much of a difference between the class system apart from the images that you associate with those particular countries. And with, California, it's one of those states which, Los Angeles has a very strong big balls attitude amongst the people that don't actually take up the big Hollywood elitist La La Land attitude, but at the same time, that attitude does still exist, and it's the same with London. London and Los Angeles may as well be twin cities. They've got the exact same images that people enlarge because they do exist, but at the same time, they are just images of a small group that tend to be an uncomfortable thing we see far too often in the press. Axl is no exception to that rule at times. He can really go out there full-on ego drive, and he can really set a bad example for the people of LA just by being the lead singer of one of their favourite hometown rock bands.
That's right. And it's interesting. I actually... Well, Alice Cooper is one of... You mentioned earlier that a lot of celebrities have said this is a good thing. Alice Cooper was one of them. He said Axl Rose singing for AC/DC is a perfect fit. And Alice Cooper's a man of wise words, in my opinion. Alice, in my opinion, his career hasn't done a whole lot wrong. I know he had his drinking problem in the 70s and a few bad albums, but what I mean is, over the past... Let's just say in Alice's... In the second half of his career, he's been nothing but a gent. He hasn't said anything outspoken, and he hasn't, Alice is just a total gent. And Alice says a lot of things that you just believe. You believe in Alice. People listen to Alice Cooper.
Yeah, like Planet Rock. For instance, he does have Midnights with Alice Cooper.
He does. And, he was saying it's a perfect fit. One thing, actually, I am interested with as well is that at Coachella, they didn't only play a whole lot of Rosie when Angus Young joined Guns N' Roses on stage, but they also played Riff Raff, which is a classic from the Power Age album.
Yeah.
And I don't think Brian and AC/DC have performed that in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I think...
So it'll be interesting to hear AC/DC classics that haven't been played for many years, Bon Scott era.
And that is actually also a thing that I think Axl and GNR fans, or band members I should say, end up bringing out of team-ups with other bands in general. Because have you ever seen where, Axl and Dizzy Stradlin ended up going over to perform with the Stones, and they performed Salt on the Earth? Keith and Mick had to relearn that song just because it was such an obscure track.
Yeah, Axl likes his obscurity. He certainly does.
And yeah, it is a thing that really paid off. Take a look and see how many views that thing has on YouTube, and then tell me you don't like the sound of a song that good with the harmonies of two people who are working class background, or at least not the highest class imaginable in London. And yeah, singing a song essentially about the working class themselves, and Axl bringing out his point of what he wants to make with that song.
Indeed. Another thing that journalists have mentioned this, well, a few people have said, AC/DC have now become Kiss. Marketing brand, don't care about the fans as such. They don't care about their fans. It's all about money. That's why they've got Axl as their new front man.
I would say that's probably a step too far. I understand where they are leaning with that, but at the same time, I don't understand how they can jump to a conclusion that drastic.
It's more the reason why Kiss got mentioned, because a lot of people who listen to this podcast know that I'm a big Kiss fan, and Kiss are a band that in the spectrum of rock are legendary, fantastic live band, fantastic songs, great singing guitar solos. Basically, classic rock defined is Kiss, you could say, and AC/DC. But but the thing is, sorry, before you make your point, when they say Kiss, it's more the fact that, as we mentioned on a previous episode, that they replaced Ace and Peter with 2 new members and gave them their makeup because people won't know. There may even be people going to AC/DC not even knowing that Brian won't be there, because there are some people who aren't in touch with a lot of things.
Yeah, and actually, to be fair, everyone knows how big AC/DC are, but they don't even know anything about the band. Quite a lot of people, because do you know how many albums they've sold? It's north of 200 million, and it's amazing. Like, did you ever watch Top Gear?
Brian was on it.
Yeah, Brian was on it a couple of times in the reasonably priced Chevrolet Lacetti, and Brian ended up basically getting the introduction from Jeremy Clarkson that went something like this: "My Guest Tonight has sold more albums than the Beatles, but surprisingly, I'm willing to bet none of you know who he is. He is the lead singer of AC/DC. People, Brian Johnson!" And it was true. Very few people do know on the same spectrum of, say, Jagger, Tyler, Elton John, Prince, Ozzy Osbourne, Bowie,
Springsteen.
Any major person, including especially Bruce Springsteen, they don't have a clue who this band even are. They don't understand who Brian is or Angus. They don't even... Yeah, Angus is surprising enough, but,
he's just known as the schoolboy.
Yeah, which doesn't actually surprise me. And, I mean, you probably have to go all the way to Australia to really find people, an entire country of diehards. Because think about it, it's a small population on a massive landmass, and they are so defined by, in their early stuff particularly, by working man, Australian outback sort of kick in the gut blues rhythm. It's surprising, in itself on that grand scale that you have to go to the roots of AC/DC to know, on that scale, an entire group of people that know all this stuff about the band that diehards would know about. It's shocking, but yeah, it is one of these things. Brian Johnson, there are going to be people that won't know he's not there because they're going to be so out of touch, and then there are going to be some people who are just like,
Yeah, it's a funny one. I wonder if the band, because obviously their latest album was 2014's Rock or Bust, which Brian sang lead vocals on. It makes you wonder if they'll play any songs from that album with Axl on board, because they've been opening their sets with the song Rock or Bust. And if they do that with Axl coming out, Axl opening his set with Rock or Bust, that does seem a bit random. You know what I mean? Like,
I would say play it safe and do Rock and Roll Train.
No, but that's only the album before.
I know, that's my point. It would seem weird, so play it safer.
No, it wouldn't surprise me, actually, if on this tour, AC/DC ignore everything, well, the remainder of the tour with Axl on vocals. It wouldn't surprise me if they ignored everything from the 21st century from their catalogue.
Yeah.
Meaning Stiff Upper Lip, which they've been ignoring anyway, Black Ice and Rock or Bust, and they just stick to 70s, 80s, and well, there's only one song they play from their set in the 90s, which is Thunderstruck, which came from The Razor's Edge in 1990.
The first Akadaka album I ever bought.
And it's a classic. I would love it if they played Money Talks. Yeah, Money Talks is a classic that they don't play.
Actually, you're a singer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you do any variation of Axl?
Not here on the podcast, no.
But you know, it would be worth getting a thing of you trying to do Axl doing something like Thunderstruck.
I'll tell you what, I've actually, believe it or not, guys, if you go onto YouTube and write in Axl Rose Thunderstruck, I know that once this is online, videos will come up from him singing it in Portugal, but before then, he sounds fantastic. And that's what I mean by it is a good fit. Axl Rose singing for AC/DC is a good fit because he can hit those notes that Brian hits. You know, we know the way that Axl can scream. And, you know, let's just hope that Axl can... Because Axl may struggle after a few shows. You never know, because obviously with Guns N' Roses, their shows are known to be very lengthy, like 3 hours long. However, there's more variation in singing. Yeah. You know, when there's like power ballad and stuff. Yeah, AC/DC don't have power ballads. It's just full out screaming your guts off, isn't it?
Yeah, it is basically just everything that you would expect from the band that pretty much personified hard rock as a concept.
That's true. And, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I want the tour to be great. I want it to be a success, but once the tour's over, unless Brian returns, I want them to retire. You might say someone could say, or a journalist could say, or the band could say, Axl Rose joining AC/DC has breathed new life into the band. And it's like, but they were great before him with Brian.
So what life is there to breathe in that wasn't already there?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, hopefully, this is what I hope happens.
Yeah.
If Brian can no longer continue in future years, they should retire. I would like, fingers crossed, they can tour with Axl, it'd be great. Thank you, Axl, for your duties. Brian, they've now sorted out some sort of technology for him to play on stage regarding his hearing problems. And AC/DC return in 2018 or something with a new tour. Brian can come back happy, healthy, knowing that the Rock or Bust tour, he was just thankfully replaced by an excellent rock singer, an excellent frontman who could still pack stadiums.
Yeah.
That's what I hope to happen.
Yeah,
but you'll never know how much money goes behind it or whatever. But apparently, Brian Johnson is not very happy. He said to Jim Brewer, the comedian, he feels like he's been kicked in the curb.
Yeah, that's actually a bit of a weird thing. Because
let Brian have his say. Brian has actually issued a statement.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, if anything, we'll even link that when we get back online as well. So, yeah, you can read it for yourselves, and we'll also link you the video of Axl and Angus and Cliff giving their statement just to see what you make of it. But it is weird. You know, you've got essentially 4 people, 3 of them standing up against 1, and what to make of it? It's not something you want to believe, but
it's happened very quickly as well.
Yeah,
Brian played a show, and then I think 2 days later or something, he had the problem, and then the next day it was all over the internet, and then less than like a month later, Axl Rose is the new vocalist.
Yeah,
it's just boom, 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 and you know the band didn't even seem to. Obviously, they did think, but they fought very quickly. It was a split. It was just an immediate decision, you know.
Yeah, and the truth is, they have options in the 21st century, but not all of those options, as we have stated before, will do it justice just because they can. To be fair, we have looked at Axl since, and we have seen him giving it a very good go. He does seem to know what he's doing, but the problem isn't that. It's the policy of AC/DC and what they stand for. They're now a band for rich people, getting rich frontmen for them. Yeah, and you could just say, well, money doesn't matter. Look at Billy Bragg. He lives in a big house in Dorset, or actually, I think he also owns a house in Exeter, believe it or not, where I used to live. But it's weird. Like, It is just strange. Like, you shouldn't let money get in the way, but when it's associated with guys that really did develop their image, when they get drawn into a class system through meeting shady people in California, just the way I say about social climbers over here, it's the same in Cali as it is in England. It is just dull. You didn't go there, did you?
This is what Axl needs to do. Not too much talking on stage. Sing the songs that people want to hear. Be on time. Deliver. Be a showman. Interact with Angus. Make it look like you're enjoying being there because you are lucky to have that spot, regardless of who you are.
Yeah.
And just be the best possible human being, rock singer, entertainer, performer that you can be, whilst remembering you're singing for AC/DC, not Guns N' Roses. This is not your band. You know, this band belongs to Angus and Cliff at the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously more so Angus, but like Axl Rose, as he has shown respect so far, and this is before they've even played a show. Let's hope for the rest of the tour the band can be great, make fans go home happy after a show. And last thing that I want to say on this subject, can you as a fan of AC/DC say, if it's your first time seeing them with Axl on vocals, can you say that you've seen AC/DC? Because I don't think you can. I think you can say you've seen Axl DC, because regardless of how great a show it is, and regardless of Angus rolling around on the floor and everything, it's almost like a super group now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is basically just that. And the thing that separates up super groups from bands, or just standard bands which made up the characters and the musicians that we love, is basically just down to the fact that they come there purposefully to experiment. The same way Lemmy did with the Head Cat.
Yep, and you could also say that Audio Slave, Rage Against the Machine with a different singer who was the Soundgarden singer. Velvet Revolver, Guns N' Roses singers with Stone Temple Pilots singer. And now you've got AC/DC with Guns N' Roses singer, which is, you know, it's a funny one that they're still using. Do you think they should be using the name AC/DC?
They should probably just say...
Well, AC/DC plus Axl Rose, maybe.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, because I would say calling them Axl DC...
No, that was more of a kind of punny joke.
Well, yeah, I know, and I've heard it multiple times already in the past few weeks.
And it's short and sweet, and it begins with A.
Yeah, I know, but may I?
Yep.
The point is, it does seem a little bit like a slant in AC/DC's direction, which, yeah, I understand the means behind it, but still. I think the problem really is that Angus is just genetically incapable of giving it a quit, isn't he?
He wants to perform.
Well, it's not an issue. It is not an issue, but, you know, if you can't perform because, you know, you've, I don't know, lost your arm in a car crash, and don't tell me that it's the same situation with Def Leppard's drummer. It is not, because essentially that necessary arm is, in this case, for many people, Brian Johnson. You've got, you know, 5 individual limbs, essentially. You've got the head and the torso, and then you've got 2 arms, 2 legs. You need them all together to be what is considered AC/DC's full functioning body.
And they've lost their voice.
They've lost their voice. And yeah, with Angus, it would be the same as losing his strumming hand. So...
And to be honest, just imagine, you know, we were talking about with what's happened, the only person you can't replace is Angus Young. Imagine if Angus Young had hearing problems and Brian was still on board. Imagine if Brian and Cliff made the decision to replace Angus.
Yeah, I mean,
let's get Eddie Van Halen or someone to play guitar for AC/DC. The fans would be furious. Yeah. But having said that, they're furious now, you know, and that's the thing which is strange about this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, you can't do this. You really can't do this and expect it to go down the same way. And I think, you know, AC/DC, they're basically not even running on empty. They're running on fool's optimism.
They are, but just finishing this off, guys, and we actually are going to finish off this very segment. With everything we've said, me and Matt here, we are 50-50. We're in two minds over it. We've mentioned the good things, that we think the tour will be great, but we've mentioned the policy of AC/DC's history and replaceable members and etc. What if? We're in two minds. We've had our say. Let us know what you think. And we shall move on to our next topic.